Hello everybody, the Nameless Narcissist here once again, a simple man diagnosed with NPD, giving the facts of narcissistic personality disorder and the things that go on in my head. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, but keep in mind, I am no clinician, I can only speak to my own experiences. Alright everybody, first of all, I am having a, God, I can't keep recording like this because my hair just looks awful from this angle. It's an issue. Anyways, kind of relevant to what I was going to talk about. So, I have this term that I like to use that I think really sums up a big part of narcissistic functioning, which is, in quotes, the narrative. The narcissist's narrative. And what does that mean, right? Well, okay, so narcissists, obviously, like myself, we rely on people to define ourselves, to tell us who we are so that we can have some semblance of a sense of self. And so how do we do that? Because we don't want to just be something, right? We want to be something that we view admirable and worthwhile. So we make up a little narrative in our head that we try to project out into the world, and so that will be reflected back at us. For example, you can say that my narrative is that, like, you know, I am the stout intellectual who, I don't know, who's a rather, I guess I don't know. Well, I don't know. I guess the astute intellectual kind of sums up what my narrative is, right? I am just the East Coast academic, like pompous nobility sort of thing. Very gregarious and friendly and charming. Stuff like that. And obviously, to some degree, I think everybody kind of has the narrative of who they think they are, right? But I think what makes it unique in the case of narcissists is, one, how much effort that we put into, okay, wave me along, even though you stopped first, whatever, it's fine. But yeah, the amount of effort that we go into maintaining this narrative and projecting this narrative, right? You guys have your own narrative of what kind of person you are, but you guys don't require other people to confirm it, at least not excessively. You guys' narrative is still intact if other people aren't enforcing it. As with me, I am not who I am. I don't fit my narrative unless other people are confirming that narrative to me. And that's where some problems come in, because then our entitlement kicks in and we basically need people and demand that people prop up our ideal, or what we believe ourselves to be, and force people into like these roles, right? I think when a lot of people talk about having lost themselves in narcissistic relationships, it's because we have basically molded you into what we thought that you needed to be. And that's honestly, it's actually kind of a worry that I get a lot when I'm making content about narcissism, and like when other narcissists relate, I'm like, okay, is this actually a narcissistic thing? Or am I confirming an aspect of their narrative by that, like, we're trying to perceive ourselves as? Because it gets really weird when you can be defined by other people. I hope that's not the case. I don't think it is, but you know. I mean, I guess at that point, like, if all narcissists watch my shit and we all act like this, I guess it might as well be the truth. That's a fucking good way to sum it up, too. It might as well be the truth. I remember reading 1984 when I was, like, in middle school, and how, like, when they put like a little newspaper clipping down the memory hole, and the guy was like, well, no, they never existed. What are you talking about? That was never a thing. Because there was no other evidence, right? And anybody else who remembered it didn't really exist. And the people who did know about it, like, didn't confirm its existence. For all intents and purposes, that thing did not exist. And that's basically how I live my life, right? If everyone perceives me in a certain way, that is basically how it is. That effectively is how it is. And I think that's just kind of how I run my life. But then this gets really negative when you start applying it to other people who are their own dynamic characters. Because for us, you're fitting a role in the narrative, a role to basically confirm who we are. I remember realizing this because like a year and a half ago, give or take, I messaged an ex-girlfriend of mine, like, kind of with the intention to apologize, but also not being willing. I wasn't to the point that I was willing to, like, come out and apologize directly. I was going to kind of, like, hope that it would lead into that. It was weird, right? It was very calculated kind of reaching out. And she pointed out that I never saw her as her own person. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? Obviously you're your own person, right? But it's because of the narrative. In my mind, what she represented was, oh, somebody who also went through all of this terrible stuff during childhood, but instead they turned into a good person, unlike me, a degenerate worm or whatever. So I never saw her through any lens other than that. Everything that she did was painted through my conception of her that I had based on my narrative. And even now I talk about her, and now the only relevance that she has is through my growth. Now that's her place in my narrative, is how she has influenced my growth. And hell, I think I even said that. I said that to her once. I didn't say it in those words exactly. But like I told her that like, oh, like our relationship, although I know I hurt you, was very instrumental to my growth. So I have a lot to thank you for. And this was like way before, that was way before even this conversation that I'm referring to. And so I'm reducing her to this 2D view just as a prop for my story. And I'm pretty sure she used that word in too, that she was just a character in my story, which is true. And it's kind of sad and I feel like this might be a contributing factor of why it's so hard for me. See, and this is a real what came first, chicken or the egg kind of situation, because I can see this contributing to like why I can't connect to anybody, is because I can only view them through this 2D lens, or am I viewing them through this 2D lens because I can't connect to them, right? Which I think is, they might just both enforce each other to a certain degree. So it's probably impossible to say, but regardless, I think it definitely has something to do with how easy it is to dehumanize people. Because, like, it's easy to dehumanize characters in a TV show, right? Especially when they're just so, like, I mean, look, especially, like, think of, like, an evil character in a TV show, right? All you're seeing about their character is, oh, they're evil, they're doing this, they're just being sadistic assholes, and they don't have any real depth to their personalities, like normal people do, right? And that's how I view my enemies. I just view them as, this is a person who has wronged me and did it for no reason. They don't have their own individual emotional landscape behind them that's relevant in any way. They're just terrible people. And so that makes it really easy to dehumanize people and to justify the wrongs that I have done, or the wrongs that I feel like have been imposed onto me. It's always very hard to say which. That's actually one of the hardest parts about being a narcissist. A narcissist is like, self-aware one at least, is never knowing when you've actually been wronged, or if it's just your narcissism, like, messing with you. Especially since, like, other people will, like, when people know that you're a narcissist, they will, like, they'll take advantage of that. They'll be like, oh, well, it's just your narcissism acting up. Like, I didn't actually do anything wrong, even though, like, I may have genuinely been wrong. See, like, that's the thing I always try to remind people. Normal people can be fucking unaware assholes, too. And they often are. I think everyone, to some degree, is unaware. It's just that narcissists, it fucks up our lives and other people's lives to the extent that we kind of have to become aware, or, like, nobody will be able to function. But yeah, so like the narrative is an interesting kind of concept because, and also like I think that's why there's some, I was talking to Ruth actually about it, and she pointed out how like narcissists will have like one look, right? They'll have like one way of dressing, like a cartoon character, which my friends actually make fun of me of doing. And I think that has to do with narrative too. It's like, oh, like how I dress is part of my persona. It's like part of who I am. Like when I used to wear a leather jacket all the time, right after my rebirth, right after I like made myself into who I am, basically my false self, so to speak. Like that leather jacket was instrumental to the narrative, right? That was part of who I was. My hair is part of who I am. Stuff like that, like these very surface level things, which is interesting because it's like it's always only about these surface level things. It's never about some like deep, it's like intelligence, looks, charisma, stuff like that. It's never anything that's of depth of a person. And I wonder if that's what, and I bet that's why, and I wonder if, and I'll have to think about it more, but I bet I would be willing to put money that other people are being reduced to just those external traits too. When I try to name qualities of like my best friends, like I can't fucking do it. I'm like I can think of, I don't know, like Seth is a dumbass. He can be funny. He is not married. He has a fiance. Like, oh man, that rain was just happening this entire time. Listen, I am so sorry, everybody. But yeah, it's really. So yeah, it's like I reduce people. I also reduce people to these surface level traits as well. And you can see like how this narrative kind of played in with like every one of my exes too. Oftentimes it takes this like narrative of like, oh, like this is just a really good, innocent, sweet person, and I'm like a terrible person, and like they're going to like not save me, that's not the right word, but it felt like I was almost seeking forgiveness through them, which is like, this was my redemption. My redemption was being in a good relationship with this good, sweet person where I wasn't going to do anything wrong, and like never works out like that. Or like with my one ex, my Romeo and Juliet situation, because me and her were always like all about each other, but it never lined up, and we're also terrible for each other, completely toxic for one another. So it's a good thing it never did. Or like when I was dating someone who like was probably on the cluster B spectrum somewhat, I was like, oh, this is going to be the person that finally understands me. And those are the lens that I view these people through, which is sad, because it's like, and I'm like almost and I've always realized that I did this even as early as like middle school. I remember like just being like impressed and surprised when people could describe partners and like friends in just these really in-depth ways, and be able to interpret their behaviors through that, because I was always viewing them as like, there's always just one aspect of them that like I would literally have like labels, and like I remember like literally even before I was aware, telling people that, yeah, I have roles for my friends, like these are the roles that you guys fit in my life. You're the friend that does this, you're the friend that does this, this is the friend that I get drunk and have deep conversations with, this is the friend who me and her flirt to make other people jealous, and we're just two very attractive people who do that. It's weird. And I can see how it would hurt a lot of people that, God, there must be a leak in that fucking tire. I swear to God, how the fuck is it low again? Anyways, but yeah, so what was I saying? But yeah, and I can see how it can be distressing for a lot of people when they're being constantly forced into a role that like isn't them, and isn't being viewed as like their own full person. Oh well, no, that sucks. But yeah, that's kind of my whole spiel on the narrative. Take your fucking meds, everybody.